In today's weather, 50% of the country under some sort of advisory, watch, or warning. So keep in mind we're going to be spread very thin, and we're only going to be focusing on some of the more significant weather as we look at the charts. It's important to keep in mind we're not a news program. There's just not the staff here to do all 50 states and 10 provinces, so some items will not be covered. For today, though, two major weather systems, one on the East Coast, another in California, producing a mix of weather from tornadoes and severe weather to snow and ice. And we have just changed into Madden Julian Oscillation Phase 7. It doesn't have much significance in itself, but it does take us away from Phase 5 and 6, which is very warm, east of the Rockies, and it brings us closer to Phase 1, 2, and 3, where we see tendencies for cold weather in the central and western states. Looking at our surface map for this afternoon, a new push of polar air moves into the central U.S. Temperatures in the teens all the way down to Kansas and single digits into Nebraska. This is only being pushed by a 1028 millibar high. Typically with these kinds of air masses, we're looking at 1040 to 1050 millibars. So we're not expecting a large chunk of Arctic air to go all the way to the Gulf like we typically see during these deep winter events. But certainly a very active frontal system in the lower Mississippi River Valley, large area of rain, freezing rain and sleet from St. Louis up to South Bend, over to Detroit and into central Pennsylvania. Snow through the Great Lakes area into the Corn Belt. Further south in the Gulf Coast states, we find a warm front, severe weather near that triple point in Louisiana and along the warm front into Mississippi and Alabama. Further out to the west, though, here comes our next weather system inbound into California, and this will have major effects in California, the Sierras, and the Cascades. Looking at the weather in the northeast, here comes the bad weather, large baroclinic cloud shield across the northeastern states, and frontal lift further to the southwest. Let's take a look at the upper air charts. The 500 millibar heights and vorticity shows troughing across the central states, polar front jet from Texas into the Midwest region, and this area right here, that's an area of upper lift. Precipitable water shows values of 1.5 inch in the southeastern states, up to an inch from Chesapeake Bay to Kentucky, and about half an inch to 1 inch throughout Ohio, Pennsylvania, and the southern Great Lakes. And the Q vectors shows the area of upper lift across Illinois into Missouri, spreading eastward overnight and into the northeastern states for tomorrow. On the tail end, another area of upward lift across Missouri, and then on the west coast. Here comes this system. We might as well take a look at that. Large area of lift spreading into California, Nevada, and Oregon Thursday, which is tomorrow, and into Utah and the Rockies going into Friday. But for today, cloudy across the northeastern U.S. Not much to see here on this imagery, so we'll just add the radar. There you can see the heaviest precip is found from Virginia into Tennessee, with lesser amounts further north. That area of freezing rain, remember it's from St. Louis to South Bend, over to Detroit, and over to northern Pennsylvania. So right there, that's all freezing rain. Then we find the glaciated types of reflectivity further north, indicating snow across the Great Lakes. Temperatures this afternoon ranged from the 20s and 30s across the northeast, teens in Maine, and we're seeing some 40s out there in the upper Ohio River Valley. Winter weather advisory across much of Pennsylvania, New York, New England tonight through tomorrow, up to 1 to 4 inches of snow and sleet. Northern Maine, winter storm warning all day tomorrow, up to 9 inches there. And we'll just go ahead and show that to you. Here's the lake effect snow warning we have for the Lake Ontario snowbelt. That runs Thursday, Friday night. That includes not only Oswego, but the Syracuse, Utica area. 7 to 14 inches there, about 10 inches in Syracuse. And as you can see, parts of Interstate 90 are in that lake effect snow warning. This large area of purple, that's the winter weather advisory. Quick check of Albany. They're expecting wintry mixed precipitation, snow and sleet up to 2 inches, the ice itself looking for up to a quarter inch, with winds up to 40 miles an hour. And this extends all the way to the northern New York City suburbs and into central Pennsylvania. Then further south, we pick up more winter storm warnings in Virginia. This is today and overnight from just west of Richmond to Lynchburg and a large area down Interstate 81. We're looking for about a quarter inch of icing in that winter storm warning, lesser amounts to the east, and that becomes ice storm warnings in the Shenandoah Mountains and eastern West Virginia. Then you can see further down to the southwest a flood watch. Quite a bit going on in the Midwest and Great Lakes area as well. Temperatures were in the 20s and 30s through the Great Lakes and Midwest region, much colder in the Lake Superior region. You can see some winter storm warnings as we head into eastern Iowa, the Quad Cities. That's overnight. Also in Milwaukee, both of these areas calling for 2 to 5 inches of snow, and that continues on into eastern Michigan. Ice storm warning in the Toledo area, expecting about a quarter of an inch overnight. And those winter weather advisories extend as far south as Indianapolis, St. Louis, and down into the Ozarks. Further south, we've got this large flood watch that runs from southeastern Kentucky down to Knoxville, Atlanta, Birmingham, and all the way over into the northeastern part of Louisiana. And further south, we have an ongoing severe weather situation. These purple boxes, those are tornado warnings. The red indicates a severe thunderstorm warning. And remember, that is along that warm front located right in here. Most of this activity is in the form of thunderstorm lines and clusters, but a few isolated cells out ahead of the line, and those are of special interest because they have enhanced potential to support supercell structures. And we also find those cells close to the warm front. Let's do a very quick analysis. Cold front coming in around Lafayette, warm front from Macomb, eastward towards not familiar with all those cities. That's going to be just south of Montgomery. Then it goes off towards Columbus. So this right here, that's some of the warmest, most humid air closest to that boundary. And of course, near those boundaries, we have enhanced storm relative helicity. So this entire area right here will be under the gun this evening for severe weather potential. Across the southern plains, a strong cold advection regime takes hold, and we see snow on the ground from Kansas into Missouri. The areas further south free of snow cover, but significant cold advection taking place. And let's see just how cold it is. Yeah, it's very cold along the Interstate 40 corridor. 19 at the Sour at Amarillo, 24 at Oklahoma City, 39 at DFW. And as we get close to that cold front, which is roughly in here, we see it warming up to the 80s. And in Old Mexico, look at those temperatures. It's 100 right now at Ciudad Victoria and 93 at Monterey. We had 95 earlier this afternoon. So some very warm conditions across much of northeast Mexico. Heading up further to the north, I did find some indication of a cold front in this area, more of a Pacific origin. And the true cold front associated with a Canadian air, that appears to be further north around the Four Corners area, dividing these 40s around Gallup, which is a little bit warm for this time of year, from teens and 20s further to the north. In the northern plains, Arctic air is in place. Highs this afternoon below zero in North Dakota, teens from Wisconsin into Iowa and into Kansas. Bitter cold for tonight. We're looking at overnight lows near minus 30 at Minot. That's not wind chill, that's actual air temperature. There's those cold overnight lows for tonight, minus 25, minus 30, and sub-zero all the way into northeastern Colorado and into Kansas. minus teens across Nebraska. But down to the south, not much southward extent, only 20s around the DFW area and 30s into East Texas and the Edwards Plateau. Fair weather this afternoon across the southwest, clear in the Four Corners area, but the western Colorado Rockies under a winter storm watch tomorrow night through Friday and Saturday. 10 to 20 inches of snow there, mostly above 8,000 feet. Winter storm warnings pick up in Utah, across all of the Wasatch Range down to the southwest mountains near Cedar City. That runs tomorrow and Friday. 10 to 20 inches there, some amounts over 2 feet. That's primarily above 5,000 feet. Not much going on in the lower deserts, looking at mid-60s out around Phoenix, 30s and 40s in the Great Basin area. Then we look at California, and there you can see that massive frontal system on the way in and some very potent lift associated with that. I mean, look at those cloud textures. That is a little bit more vigorous than what we typically see with these Pacific weather systems. And we've got a mess of hazards all through California. Flood watch in effect for Thursday night across all of coastal Southern California into the mountains around Los Angeles and San Diego. We pick up high wind warnings all day Thursday in the San Gabriel Range, west into the coastal ranges. Southwest winds will gust to 60 miles an hour. Further north, there's that winter storm warning, and we are looking for up to 8 feet of snow in the southern Sierras on the ridge crests, dropping to less than a foot below 5,000 to 6,000. In the central and northern Sierras, looking for about 2 to 5 feet above 6,000 and 5 to 15 inches in the lower elevations from 4,500 to 6,000. The winter storm warning includes the northern periphery of the San Joaquin Valley, including Redding and Red Bluff. They may see 2 to 6 inches down to 500 feet late tonight and tomorrow morning. That does affect Interstate 5 from north of Chico and Orland all the way to Mount Shasta. The Sierras under a flood watch this evening into Thursday and Friday, anywhere up to 4,500 feet, looking for 2 to 5 inches of rain below the snow line. All of the San Joaquin Valley and the coastal region under a wind advisory, and then closer to the coast around Monterey, Santa Cruz up to San Francisco, late tonight, Thursday and Friday morning, high wind warning, southwest winds gusting to 60 miles an hour with 80 miles an hour in exposed locations. In the northwestern U.S., we've seen significant clearing over the past couple days, but more weather is on the way back in. Temperatures this afternoon range from teens and 20s in the Great Basin area to 40s in Seattle and the Willamette Valley. And of course, a lot of problems out there too. The Snake River Valley under a winter storm warning that runs Thursday midday into Friday afternoon. 4 to 8 inches of snow expected there. In the Twin Falls area, we could see some freezing rain mixed in with that. The Portland area, they've upgraded that to a winter storm warning, and that runs from tomorrow morning into midday on Friday. Let's take a look at the updated data. We were expecting freezing rain. What do we have now? We've got snow and sleet there. Ice accumulations between 1/10 and 2/10 of an inch, so it's not going to be a major storm, but we'll still get scattered limbs down, power outages, and so on, especially with those winds gusting to 45 miles an hour there. Typically, we need to see over a 1/4 inch to a 1/2 inch for major ice storm impacts. In the Salem and Eugene area, they do have an ice storm warning. They're looking for up to 3/10 of an inch and snow accumulations up to 1 inch. And winter weather advisories all the way up to the Olympia area, into the Dalles and into the Pendleton region, and down to Klamath Falls. And that's the way it looks in the lower 48. We head out into the Pacific and wave hello to that system that's heading for California. Alaska under the influence of this 1053 millibar polar high across the Beaufort Sea, producing a cold dome across much of Alaska. We have winter weather advisories this afternoon going into Thursday and Friday for much of the White Mountains, the Brooks Range, and the Dalton Highway between Fairbanks and Prudhoe Bay. There is a blizzard warning for the North Slope from Kaktovik to Prudhoe Bay And you can see those northeast winds there, 25 knots sustained with blowing snow being reported. In Canada itself, it is rather quiet. We do have Arctic outflow advisories for Whistler and Terrace. Extreme cold warnings from southeastern Alberta all the way to Thunder Bay, including the major cities of Saskatchewan and Winnipeg as well. Then we pick up snowfall warnings all across southern Ontario, southern Quebec, and into the western part of Newfoundland. There are advisories for the St. John's area as they may get some of that snow that far east. And that's due to the system down to the south, which will be lifting northeast over the next couple of days. So today's show has turned into a bit of a slog due to all of this weather across the country. So we're about 15 minutes in and just now getting to the surface forecast. So let's look quickly at that forecast. There's all that ice from Indiana into Pennsylvania, and everything lifts northeast. Here's the map at dawn. Lots of snow all the way from Ottawa into Montreal and across New England as well. It will be in the form of rain from lower New York into New Jersey, Long Island, and further south into Virginia. In California, we've got that rainstorm starting to move inland, so that'll be coming in pretty quickly, and the snow's already setting up in the Sierras. Lake effect snows continue across the Great Lakes throughout the day tomorrow, and extensive snow starting to spread into Nevada and Utah as that system moves inland. Rain showers with thunder possible in the central San Joaquin Valley. You can see that's near that triple point, very similar to what we have right now in Mississippi, but with less moisture and instability. So by afternoon, we're looking like this. Snow spreading into Utah, the Wasatch Range, heavy rains moving into Los Angeles and parts of the Mojave Desert. Then Thursday night, a chunk of bitter cold air spreads into the Great Lakes area. Overnight lows in the single digits in Michigan and northern Indiana. Chicago expecting a low of 4 degrees. And then we go into Friday, and that is Valentine's Day, so make sure you keep up on that so you're not having to sleep on the couch Friday night. Central U.S. starting to get a massive warm-up, 40s and 50s for Kansas, but that will be short-lived. Snowstorm develops in the northern plains. You'll see that come together. That will affect Minnesota, Iowa, and Wisconsin into the Great Lakes area, expanding rapidly to the east. And you can see that Pacific weather system crossing the Rockies, bringing a lot of snow to Colorado and the Four Corners area. So by evening, we're looking like this. Snow across the Chicago, Milwaukee area, Wisconsin, as this next clipper starts to integrate with the Pacific weather system. Overnight Friday into Saturday, it's going to be bitter cold once again for the Dakotas, below zero into northwestern Minnesota and northern South Dakota, minus 10 across North Dakota. Then we get into Saturday, and I think we could be looking at a severe weather day. This is pretty far out, but you can see that warm advection sector get going. We've probably got strong upper dynamics. Meanwhile, cold air continues filtering into the central part of the country, but that will be affecting mostly the northeastern quarter of the country. So we go into Sunday. Cold air continues filtering into the Midwest. Sunday night into Monday, we're going to see temperatures down to -4 at Chicago and -14 at Minneapolis. Continued bitter cold across the northern plains, not much of it coming south. In fact, we're starting to develop that warm advection on Monday. Strong frontal system on Tuesday across Oklahoma and Texas, and that Arctic air may be on the move by Wednesday. And this has a pretty good punch. This has snow coming into southeastern Oklahoma, so this may be a little bit stronger than what we've seen over the past 3 weeks. And we get to the very end of the period, very strong coastal system in the northeastern U.S. for Thursday and Friday. This will have to be monitored. We'll take a closer look at that on the Friday show because there's so much going on today. And we get to the end of the sequence, 540 line all the way to Arkansas, Oklahoma, and the model picking up on a little bit of mixed phase precipitation in North Texas. And that will wrap it up for this episode of Forecast Lab. And as a bonus, I'll give you the quick look at the status of that Arctic air. You You can see the oranges indicating the bitterly cold, frigid air down to minus 30, minus 40 across Nunavut, northern Manitoba, going into tomorrow morning. But as you can see, 1040 millibars across the Northwest Territories. So that's not really strong enough to drive it all the way down like with the Uri storm back in 2021. But quite a reservoir of cold air up to the north, and it will just come down in little chunks and affect mostly the northern U.S., with lesser effects further south. We go into Sunday and Monday, some bitterly cold air across Manitoba into North Dakota, and some of that, that does push some bitterly cold air into Iowa and Minnesota down to minus 10 to minus 20. Then we go into the extended, nothing definitive being indicated, and 1020 millibars, that's not really much to be concerned over. So what we have next week, that might be it for a while. We'll just have to see. And that's all for this Wednesday edition of Forecast Lab. We'll see you back here on Friday for another episode. Have a great evening, and we'll see you soon. Bye-bye.